Hello everyone, happy new moon, happy lunar/Chinese New Year, happy Friday, happy February, happy all of it. My name is Tosca DiMatteo and I'm founder of Tosca Coaching and Consulting, and this is Feisty on Friday. And I do Feisty on Friday because it's a platform for me to kind of share some of my thoughts that I think will be helpful for people in their journeys. And so today I think there's like a couple of topics that I want to weave together. And I have to thank my friend Shige because she really inspired what I'm going to talk about today. I'm thinking about a lot of things. I'm thinking about building relationships. At a time where so many people are seeking their next opportunity, seeking jobs, whether it's because of the pandemic kind of messed things up or whether it's like the new year and people are like starting to do that, it really brings up the word networking, which can be really negative for a lot of people. And, for me, there's this connotation in networking that people have that is like you're seeking help from somebody else. You're looking for something. And to me, if we have to think about it differently. Like that's not how you build relationships. And so, for me, everything that we're doing is about building relationships in our lives. I don't care if you're looking for a job or you're trying to get your job done at work or you're trying to find community and friends. It's about building relationships. And, what is the mentality that you want to have that will serve you in terms of that? Because I think what happens is we often put masks on when it comes to meeting other people, when it comes to, trying to fit in and belong. So I'm going to use this crazy example. So I feel really uncomfortable today with what I'm wearing, and I'll tell you why. I bought this. It's like a Calvin Klein, nothing fancy, microfiber, whatever vest. Like, I don't know, I think it was like 15 years ago. And I bought it because I was going on a ski trip. My husband loves to ski. And I think we were going with friends or something, and I felt like I had to look the part. What do you look like when you go skiing, right? Oh, it's like a turtleneck. I fucking hate turtlenecks. I really do. Like, I feel like I'm going to suffocate. Like, I just want to do this. Anyway. And so I bought this outfit to like fit in, right? And I also struggle with like letting things go sometimes. So I haven't gotten rid of it. But like here we are in Vermont trying to like, make life a little bit easier during quarantine. And so I brought this up. And I'm like, oh, well, it's like, it's cold and all that stuff. So today I decided to put it on because it's freaking cold. It's like 10 degrees outside. But I'm not myself in it. Like I look at myself in this like, IG Live and I'm like, oh my God, I don't feel like myself. This isn't me. And it's like, well, where else are we doing that? Where are we doing that in our lives where we're putting on masks or we're doing things because that's what we think we're supposed to do to fit in or belong, Where are we losing little pieces of ourselves along the way without even realizing it? And because when we do that, I think it becomes harder to be our true selves. And then it's harder to make real connections, to build real relationships with people because we're sitting there being somebody that we're not. And I can think of a lot of different times in my life where I tried to fit in, right? And Brene Brown talks about, was it Brene Brown? Maybe it's Priya Parker talks about the difference between like fitting in and belonging, right? Which parlays into part of what I want to talk about too, which is, what are we doing to really help people feel like they belong versus people having to adjust themselves to try to fit in? And that's the difference. Belonging is you can be who you are in any given situation, and fitting in is like molding yourself to feel like you're part of that crowd. And as it relates to building relationships, the more that we feel like we're trying to fit in, I think that can easily lead to us being less of ourselves. So, for sure in my career in marketing, right? Like, fashion had a lot to do with, was I being myself? Like Was I allowing myself to really express myself the way I wanted, or was I fitting into like the mold of like looking corporate or what have you? And, you know, I just ask yourself to evaluate those situations. Because even something as simple as clothes really makes an impact about how we feel about ourselves. Do we feel like good about it, or do we feel like we're putting on another mask, except it's just a very visible mask? So anyway, right, we're talking about building relationships, and I know, you know, I work with a lot of people, right, that are trying to either make things work where they're working, or they're trying to, right, find the next opportunity. And regardless, building relationships is an important part of getting to whatever's next, right? And I know a lot of people just kind of like really like struggle with that idea because it feels forced. You know, so the question is, well, what about it feels forced to you? And what could you do to change that? So if you hate small talk and you hate starting conversations with the weather and all that stuff, then how could you start a conversation that feels more you, that feels truly like a way that you want to start a conversation that you could be excited about? And that's the thing, right, to lead with, is what feels good to you. So many times, also even in interviews, right? Interviews, at the end of the day, it's about building relationships, right? Can you make a connection? I was just talking to somebody who, you know, hated the question, what do you do for fun? She's like, I freaking hate that question. I don't know how to answer it. You know, it's like, and I get that, you know, it's like, oh, what can I share that sounds exciting? It's like, we have this, you know, what is the thought in your head about what that is, you know? And, you know, for me, for example, when I think about that question, I'm like, oh my God, I have to come up with something that sounds like I live this fabulous life, you know? But we have to get underneath these questions. We have to get underneath them to say, what are they really asking about? In this case, one way to think about it is, well, they just want to get to know you, right? So they want you to talk about something that lights you up. Okay, so when you hear that question, what do you do for fun? Well, what do you want to talk about? And you can pivot to talk about that thing that you want to talk about that will light you up, that will enable you to actually have a real conversation with somebody about something that doesn't feel forced. And especially in interviews, right? You know, and hopefully you've heard this advice, I'm sure you have, right? But in those kinds of conversations, you don't just want to stick to stories that are within the realm of work. Absolutely not. I don't care what level you're at. I don't care if you're interviewing for CEO or an account manager job. The reality is that when you're trying to build a relationship, you're trying to show somebody all of who you are. And some of those parts of who you are show up really, really strong in your personal life. And so share those stories. Like, no, you're not going to have a whole interview talking about your kids or your husband. But if you can share a couple stories that really show who you are, that's going to serve you so much better than sharing, for example, a work story that has no energy behind it. So that's part of building relationships, is being vulnerable and sharing parts of yourself that maybe feel a little bit risky, but you're doing it because you're looking to build a relationship. You're looking to build trust with the other person. And that can be a really great way of making fast connections. It's really just sharing yourself and pushing through the bullshit, you know? And I think this time of year, in talking about building relationships, it makes me think about all these, these things that we have going on, like Valentine's Day, things that can be very triggering, or, we have, it's Black History Month. How are we making people feel like they belong? How are we being inclusive in these times where there's these arbitrary things, not Black History Month, I mean, like Valentine's Day is a very arbitrary thing, right? It came from, I think, like literally Hallmark, right? Created a holiday to sell more greeting cards. Like, look it up. Like, it's true. But in a way, right, that can feel very exclusive. And so when you look at all different aspects of life, when you're building relationships, how can you help people feel like you're including them, like they matter, like they belong? And that will go so far in just building a real connection with people. I think the other thing is, kindness goes so far, so far in building relationships and doing things, taking time to help other people. It's interesting because in my journey, I have done a ton of reaching out. I have done a ton of trying to build relationships from scratch. And it's incredible if you can take a few minutes out of your day to help somebody else, what an impact you'll have. And I think that especially the busier that we get, maybe even the higher up you get in an organization, you forget to pay it forward. And that's like absolutely critical to realize the impact that you can have on another human being. And yeah, I mean, that's part of building relationship, right? Because you just never know what will come back your way. You just never know. And especially right now, how do we support each other? How do we lift each other up and support each other? It brings me to like this other topic of, I think there are some people that have the philosophy that they can't endorse somebody else without having a really good understanding of if they would be able to recommend them, right? Have they experienced their services? Have they ever worked with them? Blah, blah, blah. And I think that especially women, I think women can have a really hard time in just lifting other women up and supporting them if they're not 100% sure that the other person isn't going to let them down or ruin their reputation. And this is such a detrimental way of thinking. It's such a scarcity and fear-based mentality versus, giving people the benefit of the doubt versus just saying, I'm going to support you. It doesn't mean you're going to put your whole neck on the line. It just means that you're going to stand up and say, hey, you should look at this person's resume, because they might have something to offer here. And depending on how well you know the person, you may really amp it up because you really know how amazing they are. And even if you don't know them, what can you do to amp them up in a way that is integrity with yourself? And like, I think a lot of this comes from this mentality that like, oh, I worked so hard to get to where I am. I worked so hard, and so I can't risk like tarnishing any part of my reputation. And it's absolute crap. It's supporting the system that's broken. It's supporting scarcity. It's supporting that only the only the few survive. Like it's disastrous. And you know what? And actually, when you have the opinion that like, oh, well, I can't really stand behind you because I don't know you well enough, you can also do some damage. I remember I was speaking with a woman that I knew years ago, and we knew each other well enough, and we were kind of reconnecting. And, I was saying how I was building this business, as a coach, and, it sounded like she had some people in her world that might be able to benefit, from what I offer. But she just was like, well, yeah, I mean, I can't really recommend you because I've never experienced your coaching. I don't recommend people unless I know for sure, you know, and that I lost a little bit of respect for that person in that moment, because first of all, she knows me, you know. Second of all, it just felt like, oh wow, like what does it take to earn your trust enough to say, hey, check this person out? You know, like, because I'm not saying, yeah, like if you haven't experienced my work, I get it. You can't like vouch for like experiencing being a client of mine, but you know my heart enough to say, hey, this person could be a fit. Maybe you could explore. It just boggled my mind that was the mentality, and I think part of that's the patriarchy and all the stuff. But you know, I think it would be also something else to say, you know what, I really firmly believe that I need to experience, you know, a service before I can really recommend it. You know, maybe you can give me a quick coaching session, and then I have like a lot of people that, you know, maybe I could give your name to, or something like that. But it was none of that. You know, so it just makes me come back to this question, like, are we being kind to ourselves? Are we being kind to others? You know, how are we building relationships? Are we giving people the benefit of the doubt? Are we sharing ourselves? Are we offering what we have, right? Because building relationships is so much, it's that value exchange, you know, that value exchange of, hey, how can I help you and support you? And how can you help me and support me? You know, it's not that difficult. It's not that complicated, building relationships. And I know that some people feel like they're really bad at it, but, you know, question that story that you're telling yourself about your ability to build relationships, because you just might be doing it in a way that's different from how it looks with other people. You know, just because you don't like small talk doesn't mean you're bad at building relationships. It means you want to get to like things that really matter right away, because that's what energizes you and excites you. Great. Okay, so skip the small talk and get right to it. And I bet you the other person is going to really appreciate it, because it's going to feel very different from other conversations they've had. Yeah. So I think it's a short one today, but that's where I'm at with Feisty on Friday, right? It's like, how are we building relationships? How are we letting go of our own ego in order to see how we can be kind and help others? How are we being inclusive and helping people feel like they belong, and that they don't have to fit in, so they don't buy shit like this that doesn't feel like them? You know? And I did that to myself. Nobody else did that to me. I was just like, oh man, I gotta like look the part, you know? Bullshit. No, I don't. I can just look like me, and I can still be have a good time, and I can still meet great people and build great relationships and be successful, you know? So yeah, that's my Friday rant, my Feisty on Friday. I hope that you guys have an awesome weekend, and be kind to yourself. Give yourself lots of love, and yeah, focus on what matters, what really matters. All right, love you guys. Take care. Hope this was helpful. Ciao for now.